the CDC issued a new recommendation that for the next 8 weeks, events that consist of 50 people or more throughout the U.S. be canceled or postponed. What do you say to the American people who are confronting this new reality?
First of all, my heart goes out to those who have already lost someone or those who are suffering from
Oh,
the virus. This is bigger than any one of us. This is called for national rallying to every. But there are three pieces to this. First of all, I have to take care of those who, in fact, are exposed or likely to be exposed to the virus. And that means we have to do testing. We have to get the testing kits up and ready. There's 1 million or more.
He's coughing.
Let's just get off.
What we have got to say to the American people, if you lose your job, you will be made whole. You're not going to lose income. If Trump can put, or the Fed can put $1.5 trillion into the banking system, we can protect the wages of every worker in America.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Biden, President Trump says he does not take any responsibility.
Very good.
For the.
We did that. We've been through this before with the coronavirus. We've been through this before. We've been through this before with dealing with the viruses that the N1H15, as well as what happened in Africa. We provided these hospitals dealing with these great pandemics, and we were able to do it quickly.
And understand that this coronavirus pandemic exposes the incredible weakness and dysfunctionality of our current healthcare system. Now, we're spending twice as much per person in healthcare as the people of any other country. How in God's name does it happen that we end up with 87 million people who are uninsured or underinsured, and there are people who are watching this program tonight who say, I'm not feeling well. Should I go to the doctor, but I can't afford to go to the doctor? What happens if I am sick? It's going to cost thousands of dollars for treatment. Who's going to
He's tying it back to socialism seamlessly.
We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people.
What is it that we need? Listen to the experts. What do we need? And with all due respect to Medicare for all, you have a single-payer system in Italy. It doesn't work there. It has nothing to do with Medicare for all. That would not solve the problem.
That's a Republican line of attack, dude. That's literally Fox News.
Sure that
clearly, we are not prepared, and Trump only exacerbates.
He has to say, Joe Biden, you're out of touch.
One might expect that we would have affordable prescription drugs. One might expect that we are prepared.
He has to say he's out of touch with the Americans' interests.
The national crisis says we're responding. It's all free. You don't have to pay for a thing. That has nothing to do
Medicare for all for now.
Insurance policy. This is a crisis. We're at war with the virus.
He has to butt in.
It has nothing to do with co-pays or anything.
Butt in.
I understand that Nancy Pelosi did her best. Republicans prevented it.
No,
what you're talking about, Joe, here is enormous loopholes within that in fact, it is not necessarily covering treatment for all people in America.
I offered legislation. I laid out on my plan that it would cover exactly what is not covered by the House. I laid out in the plan that I laid out for a while.
Bernie needs to turn around and not just attack the legislation, but attack Biden and be like, okay, so you want Medicare for all just for now, huh? So do you not think 60,000 people dying every year is a pandemic too, in and of itself? He has to attack.
So you're saying right now in the middle of a crisis, but you know what? Last year, at least 30,000 people died in America because they didn't get health care when they should. Yes. Because we don't have universal coverage. I think that's a crisis. We need a simple system which exists in Canada, exists in countries all over the world. And that is, if you are an American, you get the health care you need. End of discussion. We can save huge sums of money doing that. The trick is, do we have the guts to take on the healthcare industry, some of which is funding the vice president's campaign?
Look, this is a national crisis. I don't want to get this into a back and forth in terms of our politics here. I've laid out a plan.
Coward.
On Obamacare,
pussy.
A public option of Medicare. It would cover
pussy. Bernie should say, you don't want to have this conversation with me. You're going to have it with Joe Biden. We're going to have it with Donald Trump.
This is like we are being attacked from abroad. This is something that is of great consequence. This is like a war. And in a war, you do whatever is needed to be done to take care of your people.
Joe Biden wants to drone strike coronavirus.
We are going to have a major, major, major bailout package that we do not reward corporations. We reward individuals who, in fact, are really put to the test here. The problem is the policies of this administration economically we've eaten a lot of our seed corn here. The ability for us to use levers that were available before have been used up by this god-awful tax cut of $1.9 trillion, by the fact that we have used, the Fed will be of little consequence now. They've already...
Bernie should ask why Joe solidified Bush's sunsetting tax cuts.
With the American, not do what Trump wants to do. For example, he came along and said, I got a great idea. Well, you're going to tell
Senator
me.
Sanders.
The Ebola crisis.
What?
People are looking for results, not a revolution. They want to deal with the results they need right now. And we can do that by making sure that we make everybody whole who has been so badly hurt. In terms of they lose the job, in terms of not having the ability
That's
to
a good line of attack for Biden, by the way.
Healthcare.
Bernie's not overwhelming him.
It goes without saying.
He needs to overwhelm him.
But God willing, this crisis is going to end. And we are going to have to develop an economy in which half of our people are not living paycheck to paycheck and struggling to put food on the table.
I don't disagree with that. You were asking about the crisis. What are we going to do about the crisis now, which is incredibly
He needs to say this is a part of the crisis. He needs to tie it back to the crisis. He needs to explain why this ties to the crisis. He needs to fucking switch it up and just be like, you want Medicare for all for now. Why not Medicare for all the time?
We gave trillions of dollars in zero interest loans to large banks. But to answer your question, where we are right now, we need to stabilize the economy. But we can't repeat what we did in 2008. Joe voted for that. I voted against it.
He's not doing a good enough job. He needs to talk about how the bailout could have been structured differently from the bottom up rather than the top down.
The fact of the matter is that if, in fact, the banks had all been gone under, we would be in a Great Depression. We would have not. How do you get out of that? Now, Bernie's saying that I guess he's going to do a wealth tax or something, that the top 1% could pay for everything, and they should pay for everything that occurred. We were talking about tens and hundreds of billions of dollars. That's what this was about.
I'm sorry.
And the fact was,
Biden looks really good against Bernie right now.
Going into a depression. What people want is hope, and they need it now, not 4 years from now. And Bernie still hasn't told us how he's going to pay for it. We're talking about a $30+ trillion plan.
That's not true.
That's
not true.
Why is it that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Why are we the only major country not to have paid medical and family leave? Why do we give tax breaks to billionaires when 500,000 people are homeless today? And it comes down to something, Jake, we don't talk about. The power structure in America. Who has the power? And I'll tell you who has the power. It's the people who contribute money, the billionaires who contribute money to political campaigns, who control the legislative agenda. Those people have the power.
Do what I proposed over 30 years ago. Federally fund all elections. No private contributions in the election process. If you want to do that, join me.
Hit him on his donors now.
Amendment that I've been proposing.
Hit him on his donors. He needs to turn back and hit him on his donors.
Because that
right now. His campaign was carried by the Unite the America PAC, his super PAC. He started his campaign in Philadelphia in a lobbyist house, in a Comcast lobbyist house. This is an opportunity for him to say, are you lying? Is this like Nelson Mandela?
Senator Sanders?
Are you lying or are you forgetting?
It's good that you had an idea 30 years ago. I don't want to join you. Why don't you join me? Why don't you get rid of the super PAC that you have right now, which is running very ugly negative ads about me, by the way. Don't laugh, Joe. That's just the truth. And they got two other super PACs running ads against us. Why don't you just say right now, go on television and say, hey, you know what? I think in the past, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, you condemned super PACs. Is that correct?
You get rid of the 9 super PACs you have?
I don't have 9 super. I don't have any super PACs.
You want me to list them?
No. Yeah, you go ahead and list them.
Okay, come on. Give me a break.
No, I won't give you a break on this one, Joe. You condemn
No,
super PACs.
ask him. List them. He can't. List them.
But here's the point.
List them. He can't.
This is the point.
He fucking can't list them.
In the richest country in the history of the world. is
Debate
an issue.
one
That
right
has
there.
to be ultimately
What a
fucking
fucking throw. What a
People
throw.
should pay their capital gains. Speaking of negative ads, my Lord, Bernie, you're running ads saying I'm opposed to Social Security that PolitiFact says is a flat lie.
That's great.
And that the Washington Post
Get
says is
'em.
a flat lie.
Oh, well.
Oh, that's a
let me
trap.
ask you
That's a
question,
trap
Joe.
card.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you been on the floor of the Senate? You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Time and time again talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No.
All right. America, go to the website right now. Go to the YouTube right now.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Senator, we have a deficit. We have Social Security and Medicare looming. The number of people on Social Security and Medicare is now 40 million people. It's going to be 80 million in 15 years. Would you consider looking at those programs, age of eligibility,
Absolutely.
cost of living, put it all on the table?
The answer is absolutely, you have to.
Time after time, you were not a fan of Bo Simpson.
I was not a fan of both.
You were not a fan of the balanced budget amendment, which called for cuts in Social Security? Come on, Joe, you won't.
Look, here's the
You're
deal.
an honest guy. Why don't you just tell the truth? You won't make mistakes.
I am telling the
Yes!
truth. You said that I, in fact, was sent by the Social Security Organization.
Cut
That's how you get
Social
clips on
Security,
CNN.
Medicare, and
That.
veterans programs.
In terms of the negotiations that are taking place, how to deal with the deficit, everything was on the table. I did not support any of those cuts in Social Security or in veterans benefits.
Whoa. Everything was on the table. All right, you're right. You just said it, including, in your judgment, cuts to Social Security and veterans.
In order to get the kinds of changes we need on other things related.
Joe, then
But
you
it
just...
didn't. But we did not cut it.
I know,
did not
because
vote for
people
it.
like me helped stop that. You just contradicted yourself. One minute you said, I was not on the floor. The next minute you say, well, yes, there was a reason why I was worried about the deficit. Maybe that's good reason, maybe it's not. All that I am saying is you were prepared to cut and advocated for the cuts of programs.
Let's just
let me-
say, all
Mask
running
off!
for the vice presidency. Look at what I did. And Bernie, will you acknowledge your campaign
so
took
good.
out a
I want to ask you about something that you wrote in 1996. You were a member of the House, and you wrote an op-ed that said, quote, "It is clear we will have
That's
to
hit
make
piece.
incremental adjustments in Social Security taxes and benefits."
Hit job incoming.
Why are your past comments any less relevant than
Incremental
things that the Vice
adjustments. What
President-
I advocated, adjustments that I advocated and have advocated for years, is, among other things, increasing the cost of living assistance. No, you're not going to find me ever calling for cuts to Social Security. Right now, for example, we determine COLAs by looking at inflation for the general population rather than segregating the higher costs that
Suck
seniors
my
are paying
dick,
for
CNN.
prescription drugs and for health care.
Pew,
That's what I
CNN.
was talking about.
That's insane. That was a parachute. That was a Hail Mary hit job. This is disgusting.
Joe talked about bankruptcy. Joe, if my memory is correct, you helped write that bankruptcy bill.
I did not.
All right?
I
And that
did not.
bankruptcy bill, by the way, when we talk about education, we got 45 million people in America.
Why does he keep
struggling with student
lying?
debt.
He's still not talking about electability, though. Bernie should be saying, that's why I'm the one to beat Trump after every statement. Just every sentence should end with that.
It was going to pass anyway. I made it. Let me finish. I made it incrementally better. I did not like the bill. I did not support the bill, and I made it clear to the industry.
Then why did you vote for it?
Number two.
This is an Obama line against Hillary. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Then why did you vote for it?
Correct in the bill.
What are we just going to vote for things? Obama literally attacked Hillary Clinton on this exact same point.
I remember that vote. It was a very hard vote. I voted against the Defense of Marriage Act. You voted for it. I voted against the bankruptcy bill. You voted for it. I voted against the war in Iraq, which was also a tough vote. You voted for it. I voted against disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs. You voted for it. I voted against the Hyde Amendment.
Senator Sanders and I both agree we need health care should be a right, not a privilege. We both agree
Maybe it's gonna say Medicare for all.
Debt. We both agree we have to deal with education and access to education. We both agree that we have a new Green Deal.
Biden is smarter than Bernie in this way. He adopts Bernie's positions functionally because he knows they're popular, but Bernie won't hit him back on electability when he knows Biden is strong on that front.
Just a quick question, which is, if he is the nominee, Vice President Biden, you've already said you would support him. Of
course.
But will you campaign for him? Will you urge your supporters to
on
support
day
him?
one, when I announced my candidacy,
He's going to say yes. He has to say yes. But it's not enough. We need to have a strong leader going up against Donald Trump, and I don't think that's Joe Biden. That's what he should say.
I think it's a woman's opportunity to be able to make that decision. And, in fact, I've gotten 100% rating from NARAL as well.
You have a lifetime 100% voting record?
That support is bought and paid
I know
for.
my record of late from NARAL has been 100%. I don't know whether it was
Of late.
5 years ago.
Well, all right. I mean, I think one of the differences, not to pick a bone here, is I have been consistent. All right. I've always believed in that, and you have not. I'm glad you have changed your views.
Senator, just to be clear, the vice president.
Yeah, that's a good line. Snarky, but good.
There are about 1.5 million Cuban Americans living in Florida right now. Why would they vote for you when they hear you praise a program of Fidel Castro, a dictator who jailed, tortured, and killed thousands of Cubans?
I would put the flag down and say that in this country and in this world, we have got to move toward democracy and human rights. That is my view and has always been my view.
To be clear, Senator Sanders,
Bring up
Cuba
Obama.
has been a dictatorship for decades. Shouldn't we judge dictators by the violation of human rights and not by any of their alleged achievements?
Well, I think you can make the same point about China. China is undoubtedly
China,
an
just say
authoritarian
Obama.
society.
Vice President Biden, you have criticized Senator Sanders for praising Castro's education system. But in 2016, President Obama said Cuba made, quote, a great progress.
Thank God. Thank God. Bernie's getting carried by the moderator.
So the bottom line is that I think it's a little bit absurd if we're going to look at the world the way it is. Of course, we are opposed to authoritarian. And by the way, before it was considered good policy, good idea. I was condemning the dictatorship in Saudi Arabia when a lot of other people in Washington I was condemning the dictatorship.
It wasn't
in
you.
the UAE.
Joe Biden definitely was one of the people who supported MBS.
Look, the idea of occasionally saying something nice about a country is one thing. The idea of praising a country that is violating human rights around the world is, in fact, makes our allies wonder what's going on.
It's the same take.
What do you think the South Koreans think when he praises China like that? What do you think? What do you think the Australians believe in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in Indonesia in the shadow of China?
They like Bernie a lot more than they like you, dipshit.
Japan in the shadow of China.
You acknowledge that your support and vote for the Iraq War was a mistake. What lessons did you learn from that mistake, and how might those lessons influence your foreign policy decision-making as president?
I learned I can't take the word of a president when, in fact, they assured me that...
Bro, the way that they soft baby shit pedal this question is insane.
Most people who followed that issue closely understood that the Bush administration was lying through its teeth with regard to Saddam having weapons of mass destruction. I understood that. I was on the floor of the House time and time again.
You should bring up
But the issue
a
is
quote,
not just the war
just
in
one
Iraq,
quote
it's
from
the war
Biden's
in the Gulf.
track record on this
The
issue.
is
He has
the
said
trade
such
agreement. Wasn't so easy for me to lead
promising
the effort
and
against disastrous trade
incredibly
agreement.
fucking
The
awful
issue
things
was the
about
bankruptcy bill
Joe
that he was
about George W.
The
Bush's
issue was
ideas at the
the
time.
Hyde Amendment. The
He
issue was
he
the
cheerleaded the
defense of
Iraq
America.
War in the Democratic Party.
The issue-
The rationale was that's the way to not go to war, because I didn't believe he had those nuclear weapons. I didn't believe he had those weapons of mass destruction.
In my judgment, President Bush is right to be concerned about Saddam Hussein's relentless pursuit of weapons of mass destruction and the possibility that he may use them or share them with terrorists.
Why did you vote not to sanction
I tell
the
you,
Russians?
You know why? Because that had everything. You keep talking about Iran. That was tied to Iran.
Yes.
Russia was in Iran. I think John Kerry indicated his support for what I did. That was undermining the Iranian agreement. That's
Yes!
why.
Not true. Our
That's why. And that's
Say
the
it.
only reason.
Ask him why he fucking undermined his own deal. That's true. That's facts.
Sanders has won more of the Hispanic vote than you in several key states so far. In fact, he doubled your support in California among Hispanics. He almost tripled it in Nevada. So why is your message not resonating with Hispanic voters?
Ha,
Look,
good.
My message
Wow.
is resonating
Interesting question.
across the board. 70%.
Deport him, Joe.
voted for
Old
me.
deport him, Joe. That's why.
I can go down the list. They're coming out for me, and I didn't even have the money to compete with this man in those states.
Because
I
of the
virtually had
media.
no money. And by the way, the idea that everybody supports Medicare for all, he still hasn't indicated how much it's going to cost people.
That's not true.
He's yet to know exactly what's going to. So
There are 3 studies. Just you gotta butt in, dude. This is your signature legislation. Just you gotta butt in, dude. You gotta butt in and correct the record.
Senator Sanders, let me start with you. What's your closing message tonight for those who are concerned about, affected by, or dealing with the coronavirus?
We need to move aggressively to make sure that every person in this country who has the virus, who thinks they have the virus, understands they get all the health care that they need because they are Americans, that we move aggressively to make sure that the test kits are out there, that the ventilators are out there, that the ICU units are out there, that the medical personnel are out there. But Jake, if I might also say that in this moment of economic uncertainty, in addition to the coronavirus, it is time to ask how we get to where we
Mention the
are. Not
Medicare
only
for all
a
veto.
lack of preparation
Mention the Medicare for all
for the
veto.
virus,
Mention the
but how
Medicare
we
for all
end up
veto.
with an
But not being able to provide lunches for people who, in fact, need the school lunch program to get by. The idea that we would close any place that I can understand the decision made to close places where 100 or 50 people or more gather.
Dude,
But how
wrap
do you
it up,
keep open
old
the
man.
drugstore
Jesus
to make sure you get
Christ.
your prescription? And by the way, the single most significant thing we can do to deal with the larger problem down the road of income inequality is get rid of Donald Trump. Donald Trump. He's exacerbated every single one of these problems, both the immediate urgent need
And Joe Biden
how we're going to
effectively
hold
will
people
make the
harmless
argument that
for
he's the best to
damage
do
done
it.
as a consequence.
Vice President Biden, Senator Sanders, we want to thank you both for being here tonight under these challenging and trying circumstances. We wish both of you the best.
Here's what's real, okay? There's no need to sugarcoat it. I have consistently said since the beginning of this campaign that what Bernie Sanders had to do, what Bernie Sanders should have done, was attack his opponents and showcase his difference. Okay? He needed to showcase why he is the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump. He didn't do that because it's not in his nature early on, and ultimately because it wasn't favorable for him to do so, obviously, because then they would have been seen as a candidate who's like attacking, they're Democrats, like, what? We should be holding hands and singing Kumbaya in the primaries. But there was a point in time when he should have been way more aggressive in attacking Joe Biden. And tonight, I also mentioned that Bernie Sanders not only had to be perfect in his line of questioning, that he needed to also tie his attacks to why that makes Joe Biden a weak candidate, whether it be his track record, his past policy positions, or his current flubs and his current weaknesses, and why that will come across to the rest of the general voter electorate as the weaker candidate when he is faced up against Donald Trump, who is going to not be as nice as Bernie Sanders, that the media was not going to be able to carry him, and that Bernie needed to communicate that a little bit more, and he did not. He failed to do so. I'm sorry. He had some good moments there, especially Social Security, but that just serves to weaken Joe Biden in the general, but that doesn't necessarily push Bernie across the finish line. Every attack against Joe Biden in this debate that did not ultimately tie back to why Bernie was more electable was just serving Donald Trump and not necessarily Bernie Sanders. And I know this will piss off a lot of people, but Joe Biden needed to implode tonight. And he didn't. He was at a 6 when previous debates. He was at a 3. And a 3 to 6 is an improvement in the eyes of the media, which is grading him on a curve.